So we're looking here at the C6 Corvette, and of course down here the C8 Corvette. I can't say exactly when the C8 came out, but I know somewhat recently, past couple years. Kind of just wanted to talk about the differences between the C6 Corvette, which I think is always going to be a extremely good looking car, and the new C8. So the first thing I kind of wanted to talk about was these lines here. These lines, I love how they come in and kind of wrap around this emblem. More lines with the hood, everything like that. And that's the first thing that I see that kind of connects the two, which these lines are kind of different, but they still have that cutting into, going inside type of design, as opposed to like, say how the Lamborghinis do it, where they have these lines that go out, which I never really thought looked all that great. Looking at what kind of differentiates these two is kind of the more bubbly design in the old C6 Corvette, which I think looks pretty good, kind of rounded off, even at the bottom, kind of rounded off here. And looking at the headlights, rounded headlights, and this had kind of contours out like that, kind of giving it a round look. Versus in the C8, which everything is pretty much straight lines. And I think both of these cars looks pretty good. The main problem that I'm having throughout this video is just that the C6 Corvette versus the C8, it didn't really feel like much of an evolution. It just feels like a completely different car. And looking at this, the C8 Corvette kind of more so is frowning. If you look at these headlights and all the lines cutting in, I think that looks pretty good, more aggressive than the C6, but I think they both overall look pretty good. Another thing I want to talk about with the C8 is in terms of design, most people will say that you will want to have more of a lower hanging bumper, similar to what you have like in the Huracan here, how this area right here isn't all that high, but in the C8, this area kind of comes up to this bumper to a pretty high point. And most people say that it's not exactly what you want when designing a sports car, but me personally, I think it looks pretty good. I think the way that the Huracan does it with this being so low, I kind of prefer the C8 down here. Moving to the side, I did want to continue the bumper conversation, seeing how this is such a high point on the front of the car. I do like how they take that line and they run it all the way down the side of the car through the vent. I think it ends somewhere back here, kind of just blends into the back quarter panel, and I like how that looks. I think that was a good way of incorporating the front into the side of the car. I also do like this line here. I think if these two lines weren't, I should highlight them. This one and this one down here. If these two weren't highlighted, I think the side of the car would maybe look a bit big, and I don't think that's exactly what you want on a sports car. I do want to talk about the proportions, and I definitely like both cars. Don't get me wrong, but the main issue that I have with the C8 down here is it doesn't look like a Corvette. It looks more like a Ferrari. I think mainly due to the engine moving back here, but I think still, me personally, I would have liked to see a new car with these same proportions here, with the long hood, short end, like that, with these three boxes, as opposed to this that we have here. I understand that they wanted more performance and you have to kind of move the engine to get that more performance, but I think we could have at least maybe gotten one more Corvette just with these proportions, with the long hood. But overall, both cars definitely look good. Another thing with the C8 Corvette is this vent here. I definitely like how they did this. Me personally, I maybe would have done it something more like vent running like this, coming down here, and maybe going more out like this, but maybe that's why I'm not designing it. So I think either way probably would have looked good, but that's just an idea I had. I do like the straight lines, like I said, on the C8, and even though I do like this car, I would have definitely liked this to be less like this swooping curving line and more like something a bit more straight. But I think if you do that, you do just run the risk of having this car, which is a cool car, but I don't think that's necessarily what they were going for. Seeing how they have this long straight line there. But enough of that. I do also want to talk about the wheels on both cars, and I think that's one of the most similar points is these wheels. They look pretty much identical to me, except for a bit of modernization on the new car, but I think they both look pretty good. Another thing I would have liked on the new Corvette was maybe this window stretching back just a bit more, maybe getting a little sneak peek of the engine, at least from the sides, even though obviously you can see it from back here. Thought that might be cool. I don't like this on the old Corvette, this straight line, especially in conjunction with the curve that you have in the door, the curve that you have here, curve here, and then this is just a straight line. It kind of throws it off. But what I do like is the Corvettes that have the blacked out top. I think this is a pretty good look here with all this just black. I think it eliminates the awkwardness of this line here. And I think this is overall makes the car look 10 times better. Moving away from that, last thing I wanted to talk about was just the fact that these two cars are just completely different. And I think it's cool for newness, but I think I would have definitely liked to see this car up here with these kind of graphics and proportions, and this roof and this long hood like this. I would have liked to seen that maybe with these type of elements, with these new graphics here, these wheels, this new bumper, all these different graphics in the back, just with these proportions. I think that would have looked pretty good. Moving to the back, this is definitely the money shot right here. I just sit this right there to look at it. This is like the only side I need to see this Corvette from is right here. Now these tail lights are definitely not stock, but I seen this picture and I was like, this is definitely too nice to pass up on. So yeah, I definitely love the back of the C6. The C8 is cool. It's doing a bit much. I'll talk about that, but this right here, this is why I would want to have a C6, period. So to kind of just talk about what I think makes it look so good is comparing it, you can see that this is just a lot simpler up here. Like all this is just blank space, blank space, blank space, even down here. And sometimes that might not look good. Like we talk about on the sides with the lines, you might need to break it up. But in the back, I think it just works here. And I love this crease right here. How it just completely separates the back and the front. It's no just curving around like that. Now this right here is the back. This right here is the side. And I definitely like that. I think looking at the C8, I think it's just doing a bit too much, and like all these lines is a bit much, and like most of them don't really even connect. This right here is what really throws me off, because this line kind of goes like this, and then this one kind of slightly just diverges, and that's just a bit weird. It's like they should have maybe either had this and like this kind of being like here so they match up or something, or maybe just scrap the whole idea together. I also don't really like this now here. I feel like, I know they did it in a newer generation or the Z06 or whatever. They extended this a bit, and I think that was definitely needed because it being short kind of threw it off. Also, looking at the C8, as you can kind of compare it to the C6 with the diffuser down here, this is just done like so tastefully. Just boom, straight line, keep it simple. This, like, I don't know why it needed this like little hip right here to just jump up. Almost looks like a bumper of an Aston Martin. But yeah, I don't think they need it. But what I do think with the diffuser, they could have maybe simplified all of these graphics, toned it down a bit, and then doing that, and then just tone this up. So make a bigger, more aggressive diffuser and leave all the stuff up here. Simplify that. I think that could have made for a better looking rear end for the C8 in particular. One thing I do like about the rear end for the C8 is how this kind of similar to the old one, how this line is kind of right here, and then it kind of runs into here, and then it goes back, and it's like this right here is like all just kind of one piece. It's like a slab just sitting right here, and I kind of like that, how they did that with the C8. But moving back to the C7, just taking a second to admire this, especially with this ducktail right here. I think if you have a C8 or C6 Corvette, should I say, I think you need to get a little ducktail. The only thing that I think the C8 has over the C7 is this right here. For me, I always like split tailpipes, one on each side, a lot more than together. And I know the C7, they had them together too, and I think just split out kind of just makes the car look a lot wider. And speaking of width, I think even despite the C8 most likely being wider, I think this car, just in the way that the graphics are done, it just looks so fat from the back. And it's like, just that's always what I like when I'm talking about the rear end of a car. And I think that just looks pretty good. We can't really see the tires from this perspective, but I'm sure these tires are quite thick enough to really plant this car on the ground. So overall, the rear end, I definitely like this one 10 times more. And I like how this, even this line I was saying I don't like, looking at it from the back, I think it looks pretty good. These lines here, and I definitely like this one, how they kind of do it like this, as opposed to how they do it here when it's the vent is kind of going this way. But I do like this line the same way I like it up top. And I do also like, again, this crease right here, and kind of a similar crease down here. I think that looks pretty good. They both kind of have this long greenhouse kind of extending into the back. C6 a bit more. But I think from back here, they both look pretty good. But obviously, I definitely like the by Felicia here a lot more than the C8 now here. Moving inside, I just briefly want to talk about this. Clearly, one is better than the other, which is the new one. Interiors usually will hopefully get better with newer cars versus the older cars. But one thing I did just want to kind of point out was the one thing they did take from this, even though it's ever so slightly in the older generation, is this, how this infotainment is kind of tilted to the driver, kind of giving that driver focus. But it seemed like they weren't as committed as they were more currently, with this entire wall kind of separating you from the rest of the car. The screen is definitely pointing right at the driver, and this even seems like it's a bit tilted towards the driver. I like this flat wheel too. Some people don't really like it. I definitely think it looks good, and you can always throw this little indicator here, even if you don't really need it on the road. But yeah, overall, I think the interior, and with this contrast stitching that you have too on the new Corvette, I think that definitely looks good. But as you would expect, the newer interior would most likely look better than the old one. Yeah, so overall, I definitely like both cars. I just kind of wish like the Corvette still exists, because now we have like a Chevy like Ferrari, and it's like, it's cool. It's definitely cool. It's definitely a cool car, but it's like, it's no longer a Corvette, to be honest. And the performance is better. Obviously, everything is better, but I just wish we still had the evolution of the Corvette with the same portions, the same key part of a Corvette, which is this long hood, and just, updates to a pretty classic car. But if I was to be able to get one for free, I'd probably take the new one, to be honest, just because all the improved technology, more comfort, more performance, more everything. But I'll probably at some point in my life end up getting the C6, just because you get a V8, you get a cool car, great looking car, fun car, and for a great price. That's the main thing that should be discussed in this video, is that can't beat the bang for the buck. So overall, two great cars, and would love to have either one of them. But thanks for watching. Stay smooth. Be safe.